Hello, and welcome to this month's Adulting 101 for first-time homebuyers. My name is Joanne Warbeck. I'm with Homestead Financial. I'm a mortgage loan officer, and this is Lori Sharpstein.
I am a realtor. I own a team of agents. We're up to 7, including myself now, with out-of-the-box properties. And we really appreciate you joining us yet again. You know, we realize that we've gotten deep enough into these seminars that we haven't really talked very much in a long time about the basic nuts and bolts of how to get a mortgage, what that looks like, and what the real estate side of this piece looks like. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, we want to bring it back to brass taxes and you know, help with the process. It's just, we're talking about the process today.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So again, here's a little bit about Lori with Out of the Box, and then here's a little bit about me with Homestead Financial. Okay, so early on in our seminar series, we kind of talked about this wheel, and it's, you know, about the entire process. We're going to break it down kind of by section here, but first we're going to start with, you know, it's good to start identifying your realtor up front, but really what's the first part of the process? Getting pre-approved.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to start, you know, getting in touch with all these different realtors and shopping realtors if you need to, if you don't know what you can actually afford when looking for a home. There may be something on your credit history that isn't going to allow you to even get pre-approved. And we wouldn't want you to waste your time nor waste anybody else's time until you're ready to start making the offers or to shop. And you know, sometimes, you know, your lender, when they start looking at your financial health, they'll give you steps on getting to the best place you possibly can before you purchase the home. You know, raising your credit score. That helps with insurance, it helps with your rates, it helps with all kinds of stuff. You know, like getting any kind of little blips off your credit is necessary, you know, to get just the best of the best, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, you have to look at this as, this is a really big project. Maybe one of the biggest projects that you take on in your life is finding a home and securing the right mortgage. And with any big project, you have to start with setting up the right team. So talk to agents, talk to realtors, ask them how they operate, ask them to refer you to their best lenders, because quite frankly, when the realtor and the lender have already worked together and already have a process, everything's going to go much more smoothly for you in your circumstance.
Absolutely.
So start those first steps of getting the right team into place for your search, and then we can move on to the next steps.
And make sure you're comfortable with your professionals. You know, make sure that they have the right communication style for you, you know, and just that you trust who you're using. Right?
Yeah, you're going to have, you're probably going to be surprised at how close and kind of intimate of a relationship you have with these people for this, you know, 3-6 month period in order to get you over that finish line. So they have to be people that you're willing to spend that investment and time with, and that you're comfortable that they're really listening to your needs, that they're reacting and putting your goals and your expectations ahead of what they think is typically done.
Correct. Okay, so let's talk about getting pre-approved. So for us as a lender, this is the most important step. So we need to know quite a bit about your financial health. So I will personally ask for some asset documents, such as your retirement, stocks, savings, that kind of thing. We want to know where your down payment is coming from. We want to know you know, that you are employed. We will ask for W-2s, or if you're self-employed, 1099s or K-1s. We also will need a month's worth of pay stubs to show the income and that it's stable. And IDs, that kind of thing. It's generally not a very large list, but we will need these documents to verify the information that you've already provided us. Once I receive that information and I can verify everything is correct, then I issue the pre-approval letter. Once that pre-approval letter is in hand, you then
We're
get to
good to go.
Yeah, you get to go start shopping, and you get to pick your realtor, and actually that's when the fun stuff starts to happen. So we choose a realtor.
And again, as we mentioned earlier, finding the right person, finding someone who understands the marketplace that you want to shop in. It could be geographical, it could be you're looking for a certain type of property. Making sure that that person really understands your needs. And that's where sometimes it's a benefit to work with a team such as mine, because between the 7 of us, there is someone in there who, chances are right for you. I have one agent who specializes in non-traditional and tiny homes, and we have investor specialists, and we have West County specialists and South specialists. So there's lots of different dynamics that go into that. But make sure you can have a sit-down conversation. The one thing I'm going to caution you not to do in this is really important. So when you look on Zillow, because all of you do, we all know it, everybody uses Zillow, right? And and you see a house and it looks like a really cool house, and boy, I'd like more information on it. And there's a little button that says talk to an agent. Don't click that. Now the reason I say that is that when you click it, you are not getting to any agent who knows anything about that property. They're not affiliated with the property. Those are agents who have paid Zillow for leads. Guess what? You are a lead for agents. So they sell your information to several different agents. And so you'll start getting phone calls and emails and text messages from bots that look like they're people. But what I find, one of the biggest misconceptions is that buyers think when they click that button, they're getting to the listing agent, who also is not your best person to talk to about that property. I'll explain that in a minute. But they think they're getting to somebody who knows something specific about that property, and that's not how the business side of Zillow is set up.
Correct.
So the second thing that I just mentioned is the listing agent. So in the real estate world, there are typically 2 agents in every transaction. One represents the seller and the sales portion of the transaction. The other represents the buyer. The reason you don't want to go direct to the seller's agent with your questions is because their goal, their fiduciary responsibility is to represent the best interest of the seller, not your best interest. Now they're going to be really nice, because most of us really are.
Well, they want to sell the property.
Right, they want to sell the property. But, and some of them will offer to represent you, and because in the state of Missouri, it is legal to represent both sides of a deal. I choose not to, because I like to represent my side fully. I'm really good at negotiating, but it's hard for me to negotiate against myself, right? So I want to put everything into representing the client, whether it's seller or buyer, into representing their goals and interests. So avoid the talk to an agent button on Zillow, and if you are a buyer, avoid talking to the listing agent, because you don't know, you may say something to them in passing that even if you do use a different agent to purchase a property, that they are going to use against you in that transaction. I've had that come up recently. So where an investor client called a listing agent and mentioned that he was under contract on another deal and that he was pulling out of it and was executing a mutual release of that deal. Well, then when we wrote an offer, suddenly that agent is requesting either a pre-approval that shows his ability to purchase the multiple properties and or a copy of that mutual release, which typically that wouldn't have come into play at all in that offer.
They didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So let those of us who are the experts in that handle that piece for you. So if you see a really cool property on Zillow and you want more information, call me. Call a buyer's agent who can get that info for you.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed with people actually using Zillow and saying, give me pre-approved.
Yes.
That one I'm not as opposed to, because if you don't know a lender, it doesn't hurt to talk to somebody, and you can get multiple quotes, and you should probably get multiple quotes from lenders within the first week or two. And you are able, and I know some people get very wary about checking credit multiple times because they think that each time the credit gets checked, they're going to get dinged.
Right.
That's not necessarily the case. After the Great Recession, the government, they want you to be an informed consumer. And so they want you to get multiple quotes. So yes, the first one will get recorded, but you have about 30 days of play to get your credit repulled for mortgages by mortgage lenders without getting dinged. So I'm not necessarily opposed to it, because I am about being
Full
an informed,
disclosure
full
and being
disclosure.
Right.
However, make sure that the people that you do choose, again, you trust. Look them up. Do they have good, ratings? Do they have people that they work with closely?
Right. Do they have referrals of other clients?
Exactly. How is your conversation with them? Do you inherently already feel the trust, and that they are knowledgeable and everything like that? So I agree with you on the realtor side. For the lender side, I'm okay with it.
And Zillow is a very easy app to use. It's a great tool to be able to look at listings and look at pictures.
Yes.
Any good agent has other tools that they can give you, other apps that work as well or oftentimes better. But we get it, that Zillow exists in the marketplace for very good reasons. But it's also important to know what their business model is and how they get paid. They're not an altruistic site that just creates all of this so the marketplace has visibility. They have to make money. They're a for-profit business, so they have to make money somewhere, and one of the biggest ways that they make money is agents like myself spend tens of thousands of dollars every month for access to your information as soon as you click the button. And then they have automated systems to reach out to you right away. So you may get a sudden flurry of people reaching out to you that you may not be ready for or may not want.
And they are starting to also get into the home purchasing business and the home selling business. So take what you see on Zillow with a grain of salt, and contact a professional that is not necessarily through that site.
Yeah, absolutely. Just become fully informed.
Yes, fully informed. Okay, so after we have our pre-approval letter in hand, after we have our realtor,
yay!
The fun
then
part.
We start the fun stuff. So then we get to start looking for the perfect home. So any good agent is going to set you up with searches that will automatically send you listings as soon as they become available on the marketplace, or as soon as they're coming soon on the marketplace, to be able to, so that you have easy visibility. Okay, so one of the misperceptions about the wonderful world of real estate is that your realtor finds the home for you. That's typically not the case. Because of the internet, oftentimes I provide the platform, I provide access, and I have software that sends you things, but oftentimes it's you that actually picks out of all of those and says, hey,
you find your dream home.
Yeah, these are the ones that I want to see.
Yeah.
And then you'll let me know, right? Oh my God, Lori, this is so cool. I think it's perfect. And I will schedule a showing. Okay. So, and be aware too, there is no real average number of homes that we look at. It's not like on TV. So it's not like 3 homes and then you pick. Okay. Sometimes I have had clients where we purchased the very first home. I have had clients where we've looked at 30 or 40 or more over a long period of time, because sometimes it takes a while to determine what it is you really want.
Yes.
What you think you want going in is almost invariably not what you end up buying, because once we start walking through those, you see what day-to-day life in that scenario looks like, and you no longer, that's no longer your goal. So a good agent will also sit down with you and develop sort of a checklist of wants, needs, must-haves, must absolutely not have. Absolutely do not want to have a pool. Absolutely do want to have a fenced backyard. You know, so those things are important for your agent to know about you, to be able to help develop the right searches so that we're sending you all the right things. So then we'll start the process of showings. One of the other things that you really need to be prepared for is that in our current marketplace, because, and I'm sure you've heard, if you're watching this, you've done more research about the market. So we have this many buyers and this many homes.
Yep.
So what that means is when a property becomes available, we need to be able to move really quickly. So your agent also needs to know what your availability for showings. Do you know, if you work during the day and you can only do showings in the evening and on the weekends, that's great. Most of us, or many of us, do work on the weekends and on the evenings because that's when our clients really need us. So we'll establish those parameters first. That way I'll be able to schedule those things more fluently. Now sometimes I have to request a showing and wait for it to be confirmed. Other times it's what's called a go and show, meaning I can schedule it and then I know it's immediately confirmed. There will be a number of things that we'll do throughout that showing process. So I will bring information about the property with you, things like last year's taxes that Joanne is
I'm a big one on taxes.
Yeah, really important to know because that's a part of your
debt to income ratio and overall mortgage payment if you escrow.
Yeah, exactly. And most mortgages do escrow for that.
Yes.
So it's really, for me, it's important for my clients to be able, before we walk in the door, for me to be able to say, okay, taxes last year were $2,400, so expect about $200 on your mortgage payment, or it was $1,200, so expect $100 a month. That difference in taxes can make a huge difference in the amount you can spend on a home. So that's something that a good agent and realtor work together on, because in one area you may be able to buy a $300,000 home. In another area you may be able to buy a $350,000 home because of the differences in their tax codes. So there'll be also information on the history of the home. There's lots about a home that is public information, so I can see who bought it, when they bought it, how much they got the mortgage for, who they got the mortgage from, if there was ever a foreclosure. So I get to see a lot of the history. The reason the history is important is that if we do write an offer, that information may be things that I use in determining the best possible offer.
Yeah.
Right? So then before we open that front door and walk in, I will remind you, at least on the first few showings, to behave as though you are always on camera. Someone is always listening. Because, let's face it, in the world we're living in, you can't walk down a street without being on camera somewhere. But everyone has Ring doorbells, there are cameras in homes all the time, and my speech is typically, don't go in and say anything negative about the home. Oh my God, can you believe they have that wallpaper on there? Or what were they thinking? Also, hugely positive. Oh my God, this is a perfect house for me and it's a great price point and I would spend so much more for this perfect house. Both of those are typically being viewed by the seller, and then all of that information, it does come into play. So I have known sellers who have gotten fabulous offers on their house, but refused it because of something they saw or they heard when that person was in their home. Or they saw that somebody used the toilet while they were there. Okay, so we don't we don't use the bathrooms in homes when we're showing them. Or they let their kids run.
We respect the homes while we're in them, and
Yes.
sometimes if somebody sees or perceives that their home was disrespected, it can actually hurt your chances of getting the offer
Absolutely.
accepted.
So we'll walk through the whole home, front, back, in and out. I do spend a lot of time looking in the basement as well, because I have a background specific to repair, rehab, and construction. So I'm looking at the foundation. I'm looking at the age of the water heater and the furnace, and is it a boiler system? Is it so I'm looking also, while you're looking at can I live in the space, I'm looking at a lot of the structural components of the home to determine what problems there may be, and if it's the right price point based on those problems. Now, here's my legal disclaimer. I am not a home inspector. I don't pretend to be one. I do know great home inspectors, so I will always say, I think this might be something that's concerning that we're going to want to bring up in the inspection process, or that we might want to have a qualified professional contractor assess for us. And any good realtor like myself, I have substantial networking, a huge network of all of those components, so that I can bring, if I need to, if I have concerns about a roof, I can bring a roofer in the same time I have the home inspector, so we can kind of cut down on some of those processes. But we will, we'll do showings in as many homes as you need to, in order to select what is going to work best for you. And we'll walk through a lot of that process of what an appropriate offer looks like.
Well, let's go to the next one. So we're doing offer and negotiate, right? So we've shopped for the homes. We've been through. You've looked at all the structural components. They've decided they like this. They like this.
Yes.
Now it's time to actually put the offer in.
Actually write the offer. And this is where I would also caution you. You know what? When you start this process and you're going to be excited, right? You're going to you can tell your friends, you're going to tell your relatives, everybody. It's like having a baby. Everybody comes out of the woodwork with advice about what you should do, how you should offer. Oh my God, when I bought my house, I only offered 10% under list. That doesn't work very effectively in this market, depending on the property. Or, I heard that you have to, give up all the contingencies. So, my advice is thank them for their concern, thank them for their advice, and talk to the qualified professionals who are in and out of the marketplace and do this all day, every day. So
absolutely. Even in my department, things change, and they can change very quickly. We're all concerned about rates, right?
Right.
Rates have been kind of all, they go up, they go down.
And
exactly.
So you'll get a lot of very well-meaning advice from people who say, "Oh my God, I heard rates are whatever."
But it might just be relevant for their situation,
right? Or it
not
could be
yours.
2 weeks ago, and it's no longer applicable.
It's true,
right? So that's something also to consider when you're selecting your agent. Is there are, for example, over 14,000 licensed agents in the St. Louis marketplace, right? Many of them do it as a side job, with a full-time job, so they have limited availability. So make sure when you're talking to them and interviewing them, that's not good, bad, or indifferent. They may be the perfect agent for you, and they may work another job, but it is important for you to ask them what their availability is, and do they do this full-time? Is this their primary career? Because for those of us that it is, we know and we keep up with all of the nuances
trends
of what's going on in the marketplace.
Exactly.
Right? And
regulations, trends, all of it.
And what are transactions looking like right now? What negotiations are working and which ones aren't? So for me, I have access to all the transactions for all of my agents because I help them manage all of them. So I can see very clear trends in what's happening in the marketplace that very much come into play. So what we'll do is once you say, yes, Lori, I want to make an offer, then typically the next thing out of your mouth is going to be, what do you think I should offer? So in order for me to make that assessment, I do a comparative market assessment, and I can do them pretty quickly, and oftentimes if I think it's a property you're really going to like, I've already done it before we've done the showing, and I've already looked at the history. So I'll be able to put all of that together, and then we'll talk about what, because in an offer, it's more than just the price that you're offering. There are a lot of components to it that a seller is going to consider in order to determine what is the best offer for them to accept. Our goal is to give them the offer that they can't refuse, and it may not be price. So I will call the listing agent first, let them know, hey, my client has some interest in this property. What elements are most important to the seller?
Sometimes it just might be time. Either short closing times or maybe extended closing times.
Yes, exactly. I've had a number of circumstances where the listing agent has said, you know, Lori, what's really important is my client can't close until 6 weeks from now. Well, great, my client is flexible. So then our offer was accepted because I wrote the offer with the closing date in it that the seller really needed.
Yes.
So, and it surprises me how few agents actually make those phone calls to determine what's best. But we'll sit down and go through all of those components of what is in your best interest in order to make that offer. Now, I will always also caution you that there are some contingencies that may not be in your best interest to remove. Inspections, the right to have it inspected so that you know what the condition of the property is. If you're getting a mortgage, you may or may not be in a position to relinquish the financing or the appraisal contingencies, and we would talk about those in more detail, even though it may be tempting because it seems like in the marketplace, oh my God, if this will make it seem better, but it could really put you in a significant bind. So my job is always to put your best interest at first, which is sometimes having to say, just because someone else made a poor decision in writing their offer, it doesn't mean that you should.
Correct.
If that makes sense.
Correct.
So be prepared also, and you've probably heard about this already, that it is not unusual to have to write multiple offers on multiple different homes before yours is accepted. It is just a reality of this marketplace, even though we are starting to adjust a little bit depending on geographically where the home is, right?
Yeah.
If we go from having 30 offers per property to having 10 offers per property, that's still a lot of offers. And
There's
it's only
still
one
competition.
house. Right, still competition, and they can only sell the house to one of those people.
Yes.
So be prepared that it could be a longer road for us to find it. So I'll always caution you as well to try not to fall in love with a house, because you have the one thing you have absolutely no control over is anyone else's offer.
Yes.
Right? What we do is write the best offer for you and your
Correct.
circumstance. And then what I do is partner with the listing agent. So because I've been in the marketplace long enough, I know a lot of the listing agents and they already know me. So it's easier to have that conversation. But be prepared. Start earlier than you think you might need to start. So for example, what is this? Right now we're in
October?
Yeah, we're in October. Good Lord. Forgot where I was for a minute. We're in October, and you may think, well, I'm not planning on moving until January, or buying till January or February, so I'm going to wait.
It may take that long.
Right, it may take that long. So if you have a lease that's expiring in the next, if you're renting, you have a lease that's expiring in the next 6 months, start these processes now. Start the pre-approval process so that you can identify any issues that you may need to address there to get your mortgage, and go ahead and connect with the realtor so that I'd love to start with someone 6 months before they're ready to go. because that gives us enough time to do everything we need in their best interest.
And again, as we talked about preparing, you know, where you get your pre-approval, and then we may actually even put a plan together to get you to a better place by the time you close. One of the things is, you know, knowing that right now, because of the competitive market, you may actually be offering over what they're asking for, and the appraisal may be coming in under, and you would need to
fill the gap.
Fill that gap. And so, you know, we may talk about like a savings plan or something like that. And I actually talked to my realtors about, you know, the financial cutoffs, right? Of what we can and what we cannot do.
Yes.
So it is kind of imperative to start a little early, and then also, you know, where the realtor and the lender actually talk to each other and
and so that we're working on your plan for your best interest together.
Yes.
So then, you know, we write an offer. Offers will always have a response deadline in the contract. It's a 9-page contract, plus there are additional writers. So it's a lot of legal language that we'll walk through, not today, but when we do yours, we'll walk through it all. But there's always a deadline by which the seller has to respond. So legally, it is legally an offer, an open offer, until that day and time expires. After that, the sellers could still accept it. We may have to amend some things to clean up the dates, but you are not obligated to that offer until it expires. Why that's important is that you are obligated up until that time, unless you tell me, Lori, I want to pull it, and then I can do that. But there is a process for that. So you know, like with anything legal, there are lots of processes. So then, and what we're seeing in our marketplace right now, a standard practice that is often used is that a listing will become, it'll show up on Zillow and show up on the sites as coming soon, and they may stay in that status for a week to 2 weeks. Could be up to 21 days legally, but it's typically a week to 2 weeks. And then it's in the coming soon status. They can't do showings currently. That's when they're just getting the property ready for market. But they're marketing it so you can see it and say, hey, when it does become active, I want to schedule a showing. And oftentimes I can go ahead and schedule it while it's in the coming soon status, schedule it so that we can get in as soon as it becomes available. Then it changes to active, and that's when it's available for showings, and they can start accepting offers. Now, oftentimes that will happen on a Wednesday or a Thursday. They'll have an open house, sometimes 2 open houses over the weekend, and oftentimes they'll set a contract offer deadline, say Sunday night at 8 p.m. All offers to be received by Sunday 8 p.m. And to be responded Monday by noon, because they expect multiple offers, so that gives them the opportunity
to review.
To review all of them, and good agents like myself, we spreadsheet them out so that we can compare, because there's lots of variables. Also be aware, just because there is that deadline in the language, and it's language that you can't see, only I can see it in the listing, that doesn't mean they can't accept an offer earlier. They can, and they oftentimes do. So if the perfect offer comes, if they have a Sunday night deadline, but the perfect offer comes in on Saturday, they may go ahead and accept that. So sometimes when we're looking at a property, it may seem like you've got 3 or 4 days to think about it, and you really don't. So you're going to feel very pressured and very stressed in that stage of the transaction.
Correct.
That's natural, that's normal. However, waiting those extra days could cost you the opportunity for the house. So what I may ask you, because sometimes my job is to ask you the hard questions, so what I may ask you is, how will you feel if you wait till Sunday and they accept an offer ahead of time and you lose the opportunity to purchase this house? Do you not like it enough and you'll be okay letting it go? Then that's good. If you'll be, upset that
Yeah,
you missed the
devastated.
opportunity, then we need to address it sooner. That's part of what I do as your representative, is help keep you framed in the process, again,
And manage
around
expectations.
right, around your best interests.
Mm-hmm.
So questions like, do you like this property enough that you will be disappointed if you lose it? Or does it just meet everything and it's okay, and you want to still think about it? That's great. And understand this, I'm good either way, because it's not my best interest that I'm managing, it's yours.
Yes.
So then, hopefully, they accept an offer, or occasionally they'll counter an offer, and we'll go back and forth and negotiate a little bit there until we get, ta-da, acceptance. And then that's when all the real work begins.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So the next point is, you've made an offer. It was accepted.
Yay!
Fabulous. Now it kind of falls on me. As the
It very much
lender.
falls on you.
So I will receive the purchase contract, the signed purchase contract by both the buyer and the seller. Generally, I will get it from the buyer's agent. Sometimes my borrower actually give it to me. And I then put through the full mortgage application. I fill out all the nooks and crannies of it. I'll get the earnest money check. I'll get a number of different things and get it cleaned up, and it will go into then processing and underwriting. But first, while that's happening, while processing and underwriting is starting to happen, then our home inspections start happening.
Yes, because the standard in the contract allows us 10 days, a 10-day period, during which you will hire home inspectors to come look at all of the components of the house that you want them to look at. Of course, you and I will sit down and frame that out together. If you're experienced in that piece of the world and you already have people that you want to have look at it, fabulous. If not, I again have a vast network of all of the different components that we might want to have look at that. So there will be a general home inspection. And a really important thing to realize in this process is that this is where you will actually pay for the home inspection at the time of the inspection. It's one of the few costs that you will actually incur and pay for during the transaction. You'll pay them directly, and those fees and costs will vary depending on the size of the property and depending on the which elements of the home you want to have inspected. So there will be a basic home inspection that will typically run between $350 and $600. Again, it's going to vary on depending on the company we use, the type of inspection that we order, and most significantly, the square footage of the home. Bigger home takes some more time, more to look at, then there's a higher cost. Now there are that covers the basics of the home. There are additional inspections that I will recommend based on the home itself. Typical ones are termites, because the general home inspection may see evidence of it, but they
may not be looking as close as they need to.
Right, or as that's not within the scope of the service they offer. So.
Sewer lateral.
Yep, sewer lateral, critically important. And that one, termite inspection, usually $100 to $125, not a huge expense. Sewer lateral, maybe a couple $100 to have them run a camera down. Okay, so let me go back a step. The sewer lateral line is the one that takes wastewater from your home to typically to the city's sewage treatment plant at the end, okay? But it will run, there'll be a big pipe that runs from under the house, either out the back of the property or out the front of the property, and then hooks into a public system, unless you're on septic, which is a different system, and there's a separate inspection specifically for septic. So for sewer lateral, they run a camera down that entire line to identify if there are any cracks or breaks, which are very, very typical, particularly in our marketplace. We have a lot of older homes and older systems, so that may be a clay pipe, There may be trees close by. Trees like moisture. So the tree roots will wheedle their way in and create a crack that can result in a very expensive repair.
Yes.
Could be $8,000-$10,000 to repair something like that the seller may not even know is a problem, and no one will know until that camera goes through it.
Yeah.
Most significant for you is that I don't want you to inherit that problem unknown.
Correct.
If we get the inspection, we know what it is, we send the tape to the seller as part of our negotiation, and we open up the conversation. There are some municipalities that have assistance programs that help to pay for those. Some of them run out of money, some of them don't have them, so that everyone's a little bit different. And again, that's where your agent gets back involved with helping to identify the best way to solve whatever comes out of the inspections. There's also a separate gas and mechanical inspection. So if there are any gas appliances, I recommend that in the home. The mechanical part of it will also do a really deep dive into the furnace. Which again, something you really want to know. What's critical are any of those big dollar amount repairs. You need to know if you're willing to accept it based on the home itself, or if that's something that we need to negotiate, or if the issue is significant enough that you no longer want to buy the property. We have that time period, that 10 days, by midnight of day 10, I need to be able to let the seller's agent know what we want to do about the results of the inspections. So we have to have that done by like day 7 or 8, so that we have time to decide what we want to do. And those options will be, here's a copy of the inspection, we no longer want to buy the property, we'll take our earnest money back, see ya, good luck with the property, right? Or we do still want to move forward, but what we want is a closing cost concession. So we want some money in lieu of repairs, or we want to have the seller repair this. Now, what we ask for and how we want to have those things addressed, there are a lot of components to it that your agent is aware of. So there's there are limitations. We can only ask for a certain percentage of the purchase price depending on the loan that you got, and a good agent knows that and works within that. And we need to make sure if we're asking for a closing cost credit, because that's how that concession comes back, is as a closing cost credit. So closing costs, that's something else that we'll talk about, right? But closing costs may be, $4,000 to $7,000. They're going to vary depending on the transaction sometimes. However, if I ask for a closing cost credit of $10,000 and your actual closing costs are only $6,000, you get a $6,000 credit. You don't get that other
You don't get the other.
The other $4,000 goes back to the seller. So that's where in that part of the negotiation, your agent and their relationship with the lender, with being able to stay on, because I always call the lender and confirm, hey, this is where we're at. I'm just confirming this is still their loan type. This is still, so based on my math, we can get a credit of this. Does your math show the same? Good. Then then we know what we're working with. Okay. So then typically we have 10 days after we've given them that notice to negotiate back and forth what to do about that. So if we get to day 10, hour 20, and we've not finished that, then I either have to write an amendment extending that time if we think that we're going to be able to negotiate it, or do something about it, pull you out of the deal, whatever it is that we need to decide that we have to do. What's critically important to understand is that if your agent lets that time pass and lapse, then you are contractually obligated to purchase the home as is. There is no, unless we've settled, even if we've settled on 5 items, but there are 5 still at play, if that time passes, then all of those negotiations are for naught, and you are still contractually obligated to purchase it in as-is condition. So again, a good agent, that's what we do,
Yeah.
is manage all of that in our timelines.
Yes.
So never had an agent miss it, never missed one, never, oh my God. But we've come close on some deadlines that we've really had to, at the 11th hour, deal with.
Make a decision.
Make some decisions. So you need to be aware of that, because in order for us to do that, you need to be available to talk to.
Absolutely.
Right? So very stressful to get to that day 10 and the seller's not responding and the buyer's at Six Flags all day.
Yes.
And not responding either, and I'm trying to represent your best interests, and I can't find you.
Right.
So there will be some parts of this, 4 to 6 week process between going under contract and actually closing. There'll be some parts that it will be critical that I have access to you, and I'll always let you know where they are. Right, exactly.
And I should note that the inspection is not an appraisal.
No.
They are two different things. So yes, you do pay for the inspection. Then and there, you have multiple different inspections depending on the type of home. But the appraisal is to value the home.
Exactly.
And it's we are instigating that. We're
exactly. The lender
ordering that appraisal.
Orders that piece of it. So the inspections is just a line item list and pictures of the condition of the home, the age of the appliances, the age of the roof. It's all condition. It has no dollar signs in it anywhere, because they don't care about that piece of it. Now, and another important element to remember in regards to home inspections is that many municipalities in the St. Louis marketplace require occupancy inspections. That is where someone from the city or the county comes and walks the property, and they do look at it for condition in a few very specific elements, all of them related to safety. So does it have
handrails,
smoke alarms? Does it have handrails? A home inspection and an occupancy inspection, they may look at some of the same things. They are not interchangeable. They are not the same thing. Both are absolute and necessary. So I will always caution against, because sometimes a listing agent will have already had the occupancy inspection done, and they'll even provide the report and say, well, look, it's already past occupancy. Well, that's fabulous. That's great that we've already passed that, but that doesn't take the place of this, of the home inspection.
Right.
Because this is going to look at, occupancy doesn't really look at the foundation, or they don't really look at
the wiring,
the sewer lateral.
The sewer lateral.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Some elements of wire, but not nothing compared to, because the purpose of that inspection is very different than the purpose of the home inspection.
Correct.
So important elements to know. So then we work through that process, and it can get a little bit intense. So be prepared. But I've got you. So we'll get through it.
We do work as therapists too.
Occasionally, but it's important to remember, at least for agents, that these are things we do every day. Right? I work in this field, and I'm dealing with conditions of homes all day, every day. But for you, it could be a once in a lifetime. It could be a twice or 3 times in a lifetime. So this is not new. So this can be very, very stressful, and it is hard to determine. A home inspection report, they are legally required by their insurance liability to note everything they see, which is good. You need to be able to see everything on there.
Yeah.
But then you need to be able to have a filter to help you determine, okay, what's really critical and what's just, hey, FYI, need to know.
Yeah.
What is something that is going to be expensive to repair, that is going to be a barrier if I want to resell this home in a few years, and or what really is a safety issue? What is radon? What does it mean? How does it impact me? Why do I have to pay separately to get the radon tested, which I do recommend you do. We have a lot of radon in the St. Louis marketplace. But it's not something you see, smell, or, right? You're not going to know. So how important are each of the elements on the report? That's where, after I get that first report, I'm a little bit old school, so I print it out and I highlight things and make notes on it. of things that I want to look at more deeply or that I think are important.
Yeah.
I will always ask you to review the entire report first, and they're long. They're always long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the shortest one I've had was like 28 pages. The longest one was 75 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a hot minute to get through them. There are lots of pictures, but it takes a bit.
Yes.
But go through it and do the same thing. Make notes on it of things that you have questions about or are important to you. So the reports are structured so that in the beginning is typically a list of what they would call more significant items. What they are also is things that typically realtors negotiate in the process. However, there are lots of other things in that report, in the body of the report, that they may not think are significant, but you may think are significant. Right. And just because they're not on that front list doesn't mean that we don't do something about it.
That you don't address them.
So I'll always ask you to look at it first.
Yep.
Then the first question when we have our conversation will be, so what do you think? What are your thoughts? How do you feel about this? And I will also ask you, is there anything in this report that if it is not addressed by the seller, either through compensation or through repair, that will make you want to cancel and not move forward with this deal? I want to establish that first so that we set, because those are our big if there are any of those, then we set that as our top priority. And then we'll just go through, so what are your next biggest priorities? And then if you've missed things that I think are significant, I'll bring them up, and it won't be a, hey, I think you should. I'll say, have you looked at this part? This is what sometimes happens with this. What are your thoughts? Because here's what's also important. Through this whole process, you're going to be leaning on your agent a lot, but this is your home. This is your deal. You need to make the decisions. I need to provide you all the information and all the advice so that you can make the best decision for what you need to do.
Correct.
And that's what I do in that. So then we get to the end of that where we, okay, we've come to an agreement. Seller's going to give us a close. We're going to accept the property in the condition it is, but seller's going to give us $5,000 to cover closing costs. What that means is that when you get to the closing table, that's $5,000 you don't have to bring with you.
Correct.
Of all the money you have to bring, and Joanne will cover that in a little bit, of all the money you have to bring, you don't have to bring that, so that gets to stay in your savings account with, oftentimes with the expectation or with the thought process that you're going to use that money to make those repairs. So something else that I can help you with is if that's what you want to do, I can connect you with the appropriate contractors that I have worked with in the past who can do some of that work for you.
Yeah. So I'm going to go on to now processing underwriting. So we've done the inspections, we've done the appraisal, we have a value of the home, all the amendments have been made. We're getting now closer towards the end. Okay, so your application has now gone into processing underwriting with all of the amendments, all the, what's going to happen,
all the changes,
all that stuff. So this is where our team basically does almost like a forensics of everything that's going on. They're going to clean up all the information. They're going to make sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed. They're going to, do a very hard look at everything going on with the financial transaction. It is very important to note that during this time, even from just getting your pre-approval letter, you need to keep your finances as healthy as possible and status quo. Do not change anything. Do not get new credit cards because you anticipate buying furniture at some point. Do not get a new car. Do not change jobs. If you do change jobs, please let your lender know. We want you to be as stable as possible throughout this entire process, if not improving your situation. That being said, if you pay off a credit card, don't close it because that actually may hurt the history. We may lose some of the history and may actually hurt your credit score. So just keep everything going as is. Pay everything on time. Do not get any lates. Again, don't don't get a new ring, a new anything that causes your liabilities to go up. We want everything just to be as smooth as possible. Because, yes, we pull credit in the beginning, but they will also be doing a loan review report at the end. And they may actually have to pull your credit again if they have any notes that say that you have missed a payment, or you have opened a credit card up, or if anything comes back out of ordinary, they will pull your credit again, which will incur another credit score as well. So we want to make sure that we're not, hurting your chance of this loan going through and the purchase of your home, all this work that you've already done. We don't want anything to jeopardize it at the end. Okay? So processing is going to clean everything up. Underwriting, they're kind of the forensics of the whole situation. We will lock your rate. It can be upfront, it can be after the appraisal, it can even be closer to close. We may float your rate depending on where we think the market is going to go. Once we, are very close to the end, underwriting is going to say, hey, we've got to clear to close. Or we have a loan commitment date, right, in the contract, and where our underwriters will say, yes, we can confirm based on this information, we're going to be able to honor the loan. There may be a couple conditions, but we will be able to honor the loan, and they will issue a loan commitment, or we will get a clear to close. I generally will send the loan commitment to the agent. I will let them know that we've got a clear to close. I will let you know we have a clear to close. We will then send an initial closing disclosure, which will have pretty much all the numbers pretty close to how they're going to end up. Now, there will be some balancing with title. If there's another sale of the property, that will affect
could be
things.
an MSD bill or property taxes.
There could be quite a few different things that are happening that aren't necessarily represented on the initial closing disclosure. However, this is pretty much what your loan is going to look like. These are going to be your financial obligations. It will not have the final amount needed to be brought to close yet, but it will give you a very good idea of what's expected of you. Now, obviously, in the beginning, too, I will have a good idea of what's expected to be brought to closing. But again, negotiations happen, taxes change, that kind of thing. So the initial closing disclosure is going to be a nice buttoned up version of what I've already provided you. After I received the initial closing disclosure, we've gone over it. I have answered your questions. We have to wait a mandatory of 3 business days before we can actually close. So I have to get that initial closing disclosure before your closing date, at least 3 days before your closing date. During that time, underwriting is still doing what they do. Title is talking with our closing departments. Everybody's buttoning everything up. And then it comes to closing day. And at closing day, I will also provide you a final closing disclosure beforehand, but now we've got all of the extras, right, that are added in. Oftentimes there's prorated taxes, there's, other maybe...
Metropolitan Sewer District, because you can't ever shut off the sewer, so you can't, so there's always some prorations.
Prorations, prepaid interest, because, maybe the closing date has changed, or, there's a few different things that have happened. Now, you'll get that final closing disclosure. That final closing disclosure will have your final amount needed to be brought to closing. You're either going to get a cashier's check made out to the title company, or you will proceed to get a wire transfer to that title company, depending on what you would like to happen.
What you choose to do, right.
And some people actually will get cash back.
Right.
That doesn't happen often.
No, it's happened a couple of times for me, but it has.
Exactly. I have a closing today that's getting cash back.
Wow.
So.
Nice.
It happens.
And the house. So
and the house.
They get cash back, plus they still get
the house. So, but that's this part of the process is we're going to button everything up. We're going to give you the initial closing disclosure, the final closing disclosure, and then we're going to close. And so now we go to closing in possession. So the first part is with me. So again, we'll review the closing docs, final closing docs. It'll give all the details of the transaction, what the seller is coming in with, what you're coming in with, what the final numbers are. You're going to know everything.
Yeah, it's a whole balance sheet
It's
that
a
shows
balance
both
sheet that
sides.
is shown almost in a couple different
Yes.
ways, so that we know that everything has been accounted for and everything adds up in multiple different ways.
And it is important to note too, closing typically takes place at the title company. Occasionally, so if you live in California and you're moving here, there are instances where a title company can arrange for a mobile notary to come to you to process it. We cannot in this state do it completely electronically because there are some documents that are required to be what is called wet signed, meaning you actually put and witnessed and notarized pen to paper. So that's why that has to happen that way. So your agent will give you the address and give you all the information about where the title company is and what time to be there and what that looks like. And
sometimes those times may change.
They do. Sometimes
the day of.
The day of. So again, when you're looking at your calendar and scheduling, and when you say, oh, well, we're scheduled for closing at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, I can get back to work by like noon, right? Please go ahead and take the whole day off.
You may need the whole day off.
Because something may happen, and we've had this instance lately too, where something may happen in another transaction that affects yours. So sometimes a buyer's buying a property
event.
Someone else's transaction, a buyer's buying a property from a seller, that seller needs the proceeds for this transaction, so sometimes there's a domino effect 10 to 12 transactions deep, and then that really sucks. That's really bad because, again, and I've had at-length conversations with my numerous title companies about this too. It is very typical in our current marketplace for things to move, things to shift, issues to come up that prevent that closing from happening at that exact date and time. Typically not because somebody failed to do something, it's just because there's something in that transaction. A repair needed to be made to a property and a contractor got a flat tire that day and couldn't get the repair done, and because the repair couldn't be done till the following day, the final walkthrough couldn't be done and the final validate, so it moves everything off a day.
It's the butterfly effect.
It is. So be prepared. It's going to seem kind of, and if yours is that like 2 out of 10 or whatever transactions right now that just goes really smooth, then kudos.
Yes.
Then good for us. But I want every buyer to be prepared for those just in cases.
Yes.
And I need to help Joanne here a little bit too and re-emphasize again, once you get that pre-approval and we're under contract, don't make any financial moves or decisions without talking to your lender first. Not because she's like your mom and you have to report to her, but because you need to know what that impact will have on this transaction. So for example, you get this fabulous job offer and oh my God, it's terrific, but it's completely different than what you do, and now it's all commission based, but oh my God, the last person who had this job made a ton of money, but so I really want to take this job. Taking it can negatively impact
the entire transaction.
I've had clients and known of clients who have been in exactly that situation, and because the new job was in a different field and the pay structure was different, they no longer could buy the house. So how disappointing, a week you're packing, you're moving, the seller's packing, they're moving, and suddenly your lender can't fund your loan.
Anything that has a financial impact, and obviously a job has financial impact, needs to be discussed with the lender before committing to doing it at all.
Right.
And take what the lender says to heart. If they say don't do it, don't do it.
Right.
Because this is your life that's
not
getting affected, not their life.
Right. It's not to make their life easier or make the transaction easier. it's to allow the transaction to even happen.
Yeah, correct.
So moving money, accepting a large, so your, uncle gives you $1,000, check for graduation.
That's a good point.
Before you decide what to do, where to deposit that check, before you deposit it, talk to your lender to find out where it needs to go and what needs to happen. So one of the things that I get calls on oftentimes is, hey, because buyers can use gift money for down payment money.
As long as it's done
the
certain
right way.
Yes.
And the person giving the gift also needs to be prepped and needs to be prepared.
Because we will also look at their financial information as well.
Right. So I've had buyers call me and say,
yes,
oh my God, my mom is so mad. She is not giving that lender her bank account. She is not going to give them any of those records. And I have to say, well, if she's not willing to work something out, then you can't use that money. You've got to find the money somewhere else, or you may not be able to buy the home.
Even if you physically have it in like say a check format. We don't do anything really cash based anymore. But if you have a check and you have it in your bank account, we cannot use it. We may have a cap instead of 5,000. We may have a cap at 4,000 or 3,000. Yeah. So it really,
what you do with that is important, and the cash element is one that we hadn't addressed really either. So mattress money, so you have a pile of $5,000 cash sitting in your house, and you want to bring that for part of your down payment, or you want to use that for part of the funds. You need to discuss that at the very, very beginning when you first meet with your lender. Yes. Because that money does have to be deposited into an account, and it has to be seasoned, meaning it has to be there for a period of time. They need to be able to see it there for, I don't even know how long.
Generally it's 2 months.
Yeah. And sometimes they need to know where it came from. Underwriters, once they start down that path of digging into that, then sometimes that leads to other questions and other things. So be prepared for a couple of different things. Be prepared for a lot of questions that are going to feel very intrusive.
Yes.
It just is. For them to say, for your lender to have to reach out and say, hey, the underwriter found a $500 deposit in your account. They need a written explanation of where that came from and why it's there. And you're going to go, you need what? That's a part of this world.
Absolutely.
And a lot of it is honestly, in the end, to protect you. It's also to protect them and protect the integrity of the loan. It came out of the crash of 07 and 08, right? So things in the lending world that caused that crash to happen have now been addressed. So there's a lot more
regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, so we now have a closing date. We are at the closing table. We've already talked about getting a cashier's check made out to the title company, or we're going to wire the funds. Now we're back to you. So we're at the closing table.
You're right. So once they've done, so you do the biggest part. And I'm going to tell you, loosen up your wrist when you come. Be prepared.
Stretch a little bit.
Right. It's probably closing tip could take 45 minutes or so, sometimes an hour, depending on if you have a lot of questions on the documents that you're signing. So you'll have a big stack about that big of documents for the lender, and then you're going to have a smaller stack that the title closer will go through with you. And those are the documents that are going to actually allow the deed to transfer to you. So what you've done with Joanne is you have signed every agreement promising that you're going to pay back this money for this house, and that if you don't pay it back, they get the house, in a nutshell. There's lots of other stuff in there, but that's a part of it, or the biggest purpose of those documents. Then you have to actually close on and transfer the deed for the property, right? So then and your title closer will go through all of that paperwork and what that means. Then at that point, we all kind of go, okay, we're done with this part of it. We're almost, and you want to say, yay, we're over the finish line, but we're so close, but not quite there. So the next step is I will go ahead and give you the keys to the home, with the caveat that you don't actually own the home, until the funds, so the money, so the lender gives the title company the money. So then you sign all of your documents, the title closer goes back through it, ensures everything is signed right, everything's done right. They send your closing documents to the title company for the seller, because it's typically 2 different title companies, and then they wire transfer the money from your title company to their title company.
To the appropriate places.
Yes.
So it's not just the lender and the title company.
Right.
It's probably
There's there could be other places that money has to go.
The taxes, the they also have to pay off the sellers.
Right, the seller has to pay off
seller loan,
right,
if they have one. Like there's a number of different transactions that will happen that day.
Part of that, yes. So what'll happen is you'll have the keys in hand. You have the moving truck. You're like, Lori, can I go in? Can I go in? Can I go in? And I may be saying, not yet, not yet, not yet.
Yes.
Because until the funds are received on the other end, you don't own the property and you can't enter it. As soon as that happens, my title company lets me know, Lori, we're funded, woohoo! And then I call you and say, okay, let the moving commence. Whatever it is that you want to do.
Let the celebration commence.
Exactly. As of right this minute, you are a proud homeowner.
Yes.
And then you get to move in and get started with the rest of your life.
Yes. Yay! So, I mean, that in a nutshell, that's it.
That's it. Yeah, start to finish. That's an easy process,
That's an easy
right?
process, right? Yeah.
And what I'd also say is just because we closed and we've done with that transaction, that doesn't mean that we're done. Right? Things may come up.
Let's just say, too, keep your finances stable for even like a week, maybe 2, after getting the keys in hand.
Right.
Because there's going to be some checkups even thereafter. And if your debt to income ratio, if anything really gets out of whack,
right, it could impact your mortgage.
It can impact things. So just, don't, again, try and not change jobs and, until maybe a week or 2 after, that kind of thing.
And once you move in and you start identifying, maybe there's things that you want to do to the house, maybe you need contractors, maybe something happens to the house or you didn't, that you didn't see coming, or you have a question about the insurance you got, whatever, reach out, because I'm always going to help you to answer those questions.
And me too.
Also be prepared, and we always give this speech at closing, but also be prepared. The fact that you closed on this house is public record. So, and there are many, many predatory companies that track those public records very closely, and they will reach out to you to try to sell you stuff. One of the most common ones, because every single person who closes gets this, they get a letter that looks really, really official. It's got, like, from Jefferson City, it's got the seals on it, and it says, hey, okay, you pay us $89 and we will send you a copy of your deed.
Not necessary.
No, you already paid for that. Your title company will send you, and it will could be 45, 60 days before you get a big packet in the mail that has your actual deed. But this letter, ignore it, throw it in the trash.
Yes.
Somebody may knock on your door, typically from a security company or an internet company, and they're going to say, hi, I'm here, your realtor set up an appointment for me to come in and set up your service. No realtor I know does that.
Correct.
I will never send somebody to your house. I will never refer anybody to you without your knowledge and permission first. What these companies do is they track those records and literally walk door to door in neighborhoods and say that. So fortunately, when that's happened to my clients have responded and said, oh really, what's my realtor's name? They have no idea. Or no, my realtor wouldn't do that, but here, let me, and I've had them be able to give me their business card so then I could call back and call that person's boss and yell at them, which doesn't really do any good because that is the basis of their business models. They use public records to try to manipulate signing you up for a service that you think I arranged and you're going to have to pay for.
And
so
because
that's not gonna
you
happen.
trust the
Right.
realtor, you're more apt to sign up for it because, oh, Lori recommended it.
Right.
Lori has my best interest at heart.
Exactly.
Well, no,
But they don't know
they don't.
Lori's name, so
Exactly.
they don't know anything about Lori. So you get mail that looks questionable, snap a picture of it, text it to me, and I'll let you know.
Same with me. If you
Yep.
get a call that you're not expecting, or
Yeah.
you know,
Somebody may
letter
call
or
about,
people,
asking financial information. It's
Yeah.
just because buying a home is a trigger, large lifestyle change that a lot of people will, a lot of
they
businesses
follow.
Right, will follow up and will
Mm-hmm.
try to take advantage of you. We
Yep.
don't like that.
No. Okay. So, as we say every month, we're doing this for the public to be, more informed consumers. We want you to succeed, and so we have put together a number of online tools and resources. We've got a Facebook page, our home buying guide, YouTube is now, we're collecting all these that we've
Right, all
done
of
and we're
these on
putting on there.
YouTube.
So please, follow us, join up, learn more, become, better informed.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We have a new site that we're putting a lot of these things, these tools together on, called outoftheboxuniversity.com. Has a really cool little mascot,
Yes.
octopus. He's pretty adorable. But there are a number of elements there where you can get connections to some of our previous speakers or to some of our network of people to answer your questions. Certainly have access to us. You can go in there and view our previous seminars. And we're continuing to build those tools. So
Yes.
if there's something that you want or need or want to know more about, let us know, because we'll find an expert for you.
Absolutely. Okay. So we just want to thank you. Join us next month, and we wish you the best of luck and the best of success.